I want to start this video with a confession, not a lesson. A few months ago, I was supposed to lift on a Tuesday, and instead of going into the gym, I sat in my car in a parking lot for about 10 minutes, trying to talk myself into going in. I'd just come off back to back client sessions. I hadn't eaten enough, and I genuinely could not locate a single reason I wanted to be there. I'm Dr. Jen Bradley, and I'm telling you that story first because I think we spend so much time talking about the moment things fall apart, and almost no time talking about what it actually looks like from the inside. It doesn't necessarily look dramatic. It looks like sitting in a parking lot, negotiating with yourself, completely out of gas. So I went in anyway, did about half of what I'd planned to do, and left without feeling triumphant about it at all. But that was actually the good outcome, because a few weeks later, travel and a packed schedule knocked the habit out entirely for almost 2 weeks. And I know exactly what used to happen to me in that situation, because it happened for years before I built any of what I'm about to tell you. Here's what the old pattern looked like. The gap would stretch. I'd feel worse about it the longer it went on, which made it harder to walk back in, which made the distance stretch even further, until eventually I'd tell myself I was starting completely over and months of consistency just didn't count anymore. Like none of it had happened. I want you to notice something about that pattern, because I think almost every woman watching this has lived some version of it. The thing that actually derailed me wasn't the missed workout. It was the story I told myself about the missed workout. A woman wrote to me recently and described this exact thing. She'd done everything right for 6 weeks. Then she got sick, missed 4 days, and 3 weeks later, she still hadn't found her way back. And that wasn't because 4 days is a lot. It was because somewhere in there, she started believing she'd already failed. And once you believe that, why would you bother going back? Here's the reframe I want to give you today. And I want to say it plainly because I think it's the single most useful thing I know about behavior change. Getting off track wasn't the central problem. Every person who has ever built a habit that lasted has also gotten off track. Illness happens. Travel happens. Your motivation fluctuates for reasons that have nothing to do with how committed you are. The women who build something that lasts don't fall off and stop, because everyone falls off at some point. But what they do is they've learned to get back on quickly. The rest of us picked up the wrong skill entirely. We were taught to focus on staying consistent, as if that's the whole game. And consistency inevitably breaks. It will for you, for me, for everyone. When that happens, if that's what you believe, you don't have anything to fall back on except shame. And shame does not rebuild a habit. It actually does the opposite. It keeps you away from it longer. I want to explain why, because I think it changes how hard you are on yourself the next time you slip. Here's what shame actually says in that moment. It doesn't just say you missed a workout. It says you're the kind of person who can't do this. That's a much harder story to act your way out of, because it's not about what you did, it's about who you are. There's a theory in psychology called self-discrepancy theory, and it explains why that particular story does so much damage. The idea is that distress comes from the distance between who you actually are and who you're trying to become. Shame widens that divide. It doesn't just register the missed workout as a small setback. It makes the space between where you are and where you want to be feel enormous, almost impossible to close. And when that distance feels that wide, going back doesn't feel like taking one small step forward. It feels like starting an entire climb over again. So a lot of women just don't. Not because they don't care, because the divide shame created feels too big to face. There's research that backs this up too. Psychologist Kristen Neff has spent 2 decades studying what happens when people respond to setbacks with self-criticism versus self-compassion, and her findings are consistent. Self-criticism doesn't work as a motivator the way we think it might. Self-critical people made less progress toward their goals. More procrastination, not less. Self-compassion, on the other hand, was linked to people staying more motivated after a setback. A lot of us were raised to believe the opposite, that we need to be hard on ourselves or we'll get lazy. That self-compassion is the soft option, and self-criticism is the one that actually gets results. The research shows that's backwards. Self-criticism activates fear, and fear-based motivation is brittle. It works until it doesn't, and then it produces exactly the avoidance it was trying to prevent in the first place. There's a related concept from addiction research called the abstinence violation effect. The idea is simple. The more rigidly you define success as never slipping, the more catastrophic one slip feels, and the more likely you are to give up entirely instead of just getting back up. A habit built on all or nothing thinking doesn't just make setbacks more painful, it makes them permanent. So, here's what I actually did differently this time with the lifting. I had already decided, weeks before that travel stretch even happened, exactly what my smaller version looked like when the full version wasn't available. I wasn't sitting there exhausted trying to figure out what to do. I already knew. I just followed the plan I'd made back when I had the clarity to make it. I call this a back on track plan, and it has 3 tiers. Plan A is the full version of the habit, the one you do when life is cooperating with you. Plan B is a scaled down version, still meaningful, still moving you forward, but asking less of your capacity. Plan C is the floor, the smallest version that still counts as showing up, the one you can manage even on your hardest day. Here's the thing about this plan. It only works if you build it before you need it. Trying to figure out your plan B while you're already 3 days behind and running on empty is so much harder than deciding it now while you have a clear head. So take whatever habit matters most to you right now. Walking, strength training, meal prep, whatever it might be. Plan A is your full version. Plan B might be 10 minutes instead of 45. Plan C might be 2 minutes of movement in your kitchen, nothing more required. I want to be clear about something. The 2 minutes isn't really the point. The point is that the habit never fully goes dark. Because a habit that never fully goes dark is so much easier to bring back up to full strength than the one you have to rebuild completely from nothing. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Getting off track is part of the process. It's not a plot twist, and it's not evidence that something is wrong with you. Getting back on is the whole skill, not staying perfect. That was never available to any of us, including me, including the women whose routines look flawless from the outside. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one habit right now, the one that's actually been slipping or the one you're most afraid will slip the next time life gets complicated. Decide your plan B and your plan C today while you have the clarity to think it through. Then put it somewhere you'll actually see again, because you will not remember to go looking for it on the day you're already behind. I go deeper into this over on my Substack, including the full framework broken out across all four adaptation domains: physical, emotional, social, and lifestyle, if you want to build this out further. I'll leave that link below. I'll see you next week.